over there. No, I did choose to leave. It's a good job that I did. We'll be talking more about those A-levels in a moment with Peter Ashton, who is a politics teacher and lecturer who was responsible for part of the education of Gavin Williamson, the man who finds himself in the crosshairs of that media onslaught at the moment. But let's get a quick reaction on the ice cream manufacturer who's getting involved in the war of words over the migrant crossing so-called crisis. Catherine and Guildford, are they right so to do? Good morning.
Well, I think, good morning, Nick. I don't think there's any difference, is there, between Wetherspoon's virtue signalling over their Brexit stance and Ben & Jerry's virtue signalling, if that's what you want to call it, over their asylum seekers are people.
All I would say, you're absolutely right, and top of the class to keep an education theme running, but the thing that sticks in my craw is that people are probably lying at the bottom of the channel who didn't make the crossing. That's the thing that really gets to me. And an ice cream company, and indeed the government, I think the government should have just risen above it and not responded.
I absolutely think you're right. I think that not responding would have been much better stance from the Conservative Party, and I think Priti Patel is virtually signalling with her response and her getting her waving out, getting all look at my big navy, which actually is cut to the bone stance. It's all about, flexing muscles, saying, we've got the biggest virtues. And in fact, as a consumer, like we all are, we all make decisions all the time about which brands we support or not.
Yes.
And to me, I think that Ben & Jerry's going, well, they're ethical, they've got values. It's a great piece of marketing from them. And in fact, the Conservative Party are purely giving them free marketing. I think Ben & Jerry's profits and turnover will leap hugely because of this silly game they're playing to really hide the fact that we've got the worst recession in Europe, the worst drop in GDP, and the highest number of excess deaths.
All of which is true.
All of this is to hide that fact.
The deaths might not quite be the same because there's a recalibration of some of the figures, but you're absolutely right, the broad thrust of what you say. Lastly, do you think you'll be more likely to buy Ben & Jerry's products? Do you always buy them anyway? What's your feeling towards the actual product now?
Well, I probably would go out and buy Ben & Jerry's now. And in fact, actually, there were some threads on Twitter now, people talking about their favourite flavours. I was thinking, let's go and try that. So I think it's been a great move by Ben & Jerry's, and people who support that particular ethical stance. It's exactly the same as if a company's got green credentials or not.
Cookie dough is the one to try, by the way.
I like fish food, actually.
Oh, you do know. Fish food spelled P-H-I-S-H. Yes, my children like that as well. Catherine, great speaking with you. Thank you for that. Look after yourself. So let's move to what will be the story of the day. It has been the story, really, of this week. As I said earlier, 3 days of negative headlines now for the Education Department. It's the handling of the A-level issue. It was always going to be difficult. What might they have done differently? Let's turn to Peter Ashton, who, as a retired politics and government teacher at Scarborough at Sixth Form College, and who was part of the education of Secretary of State for Education, Gavin Williamson. Mr. Ashton joins me now. First off, to the many teenagers and their mums, dads, siblings who will be listening now, what level of sympathy do you have for these people who are caught up this particular cohort? Mr. Ashton, good morning.
I have a huge amount of sympathy, obviously, being a teacher for 40 years. You're very much involved with the students, so I fully understand how they must be feeling. Obviously, all this started with a decision made to close the schools and cancel the exams. So I suppose it was inevitable that you would have problems and that the integrity of the exams would be questioned in this situation, because it's obviously not the same as all the students sitting down in an exam room and taking the exams. So, they've had their year disrupted. They're having all this extra stress now. So I've got huge sympathy.
What do you think the government might have done differently? They requested these predicted grades from teachers and then effectively said thank you very much, and you could argue ignored them by feeding them into an algorithm system.
Well, I'm not very keen on algorithm systems for various reasons, to be honest with you. I don't think it's a very good idea. In that also, it tends to sort of disadvantage high-achieving pupils in low-performing schools. So, for example, if a school got 5% grade A's last year, and the teachers are recommending 10% grade A's, they'll change the results to fit this model, you see. This is the problem. So the grades will all change and maybe be lowered, so you'll get students suffering as a result of that. I think obviously this was an idea put forward by Ofqual you know, for both Scotland and England. But I'm not in favour of this system at all. I think it makes it more of a lottery, to be honest with you.
Mr. Ashton, what would you have gone with? Would you have gone with mocks and teacher assessment?
Well, I don't want to sort of go back too much on past history, but basically a couple of years ago, I mean, you look at the situation in Wales, right? In Wales, the AS level is part of the A level. So basically, the results in the lower six can count towards the upper six exams. So the AS is part of the A level.
Yes.
What happened in England? Michael Gove, about 3 years ago, he scrapped the AS levels as part of the A level. Now we base A level results in England now on results at the end of 2 years. And you have mock exams. Mock exams are clearly not the same as a standardised external exam. So you've got the situation in Wales where they had a different system and Michael Gove's reforms didn't apply. So the Welsh situation is now far better because they've got an external exam to go on. So the Welsh students can have a much better idea of their predicted grade because they've got an AS grade from last summer. In England, it's completely different because they're talking about mock exams. But mock exams aren't standardised in the same way that you've got an external exam. Now, I couldn't have predicted what happened this year, but I always thought that it was a mistake to change the system. I was very happy with the AS as part of the A level. Now, I think it's come back to haunt Michael Gove in particular for changing the way the A levels were calculated. Teachers weren't really consulted at the time, so the Welsh have now got a better idea of the real grade of the student, in my opinion.
And that was Michael Gove. The current inhabitant is Gavin Williamson, who is a former pupil of yours. How would you say he's fared?
Well, I think it's been very, very difficult because obviously I'm assuming that the decision to close down the schools was taken by the Prime Minister. So obviously, you know, there's a problem created, if you like, by the man at the top. We then have this situation. I think one of the problems that you've got really is that all of the solutions have problems. I mean, I've just mentioned, for example, about the mock exams. Mock exams aren't standardised. Some schools don't have mock exams. Predicted grades, well, that can inflate the results. And also, of course, you can have a teacher who might have a problem with a particular student and that might downgrade that student, and so on and so forth. So I think all of the solutions have problems. I think probably what he's done is he's come up with the right answer in this situation. However, it probably would have been better to have done it earlier. But obviously, I assume that Ofwat have some independence, and therefore they decided on this system, you know, this sort of lottery system where you rearrange the grades.
Anybody envies Mr. Williamson. Lastly, Mr. Ashton, always a delight speaking with you. I'm going to have to ask you this. What grade would you give Mr. Williamson and his colleagues for their handling of this?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I prefer to go on effort grades. So I'd give him a high grade for effort, really, because I think, to be honest with you, you know, he wants to get the students back to school, he wants to get them educated, so I'd give him a very high grade for effort.
But not for attainment, Mr.
With
Ashton.
regards to attainment, that's always a difficult one. I think the problems have actually been created by other people.
Great speaking with you as ever. Thank you for both your input and your assessment as well. Peter Ashton, retired politics and government teacher at Scarborough Sixth Form College, a college attended by Educator Secretary Gavin Williamson, who's with us later in the hour. Also, coming up after the news...
3 dead, 6 in hospital following a horrific train crash in Aberdeenshire. I'm LBC's Phil McDonald in Stonehaven with the latest.
We'll come back to more of your reactions concerning the war of words between Conservatives and an ice cream manufacturer, and we pay tribute to an absolute entertainment icon who took a small group of cinemas in Boston and across New England and built it into one of the biggest media companies you can imagine. Viacom, CBS, MTV, Paramount, all controlled by Sumner Redstone, responsible for movies such as... which of course is The Godfather, and hit TV set shows such as... is, of course, MASH, an appreciation of that extraordinary career after this. It's 7:31, you're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC. Let's get the news. Holly Harris.
Today is the first time A-level students across England, Wales and Northern Ireland will get their results despite not sitting any exams. They were cancelled because of the coronavirus pandemic, so results will be based on teachers' assessments instead, although students will be able to appeal. Investigations resumed this morning after 3 people were killed when a train derailed near Stonehaven in Aberdeenshire yesterday. 6 other people were injured. Yesterday's accident is the first fatal train crash in the UK for more than a decade. A study suggests almost 3.5 million people in England have already had coronavirus, despite only 300,000 cases being confirmed in the UK. Imperial College London also found people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and those people living in London were most likely to be infected. The weather, very warm in the south with more thunderstorms developing, mostly dry in northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some sunshine in the west, a high of 29 Celsius.
The voices of LBC at the weekend. Matt Fry.
Let's just listen to what Boris Johnson had to say talking about his 6-month plan for recovery.
We must carry on waging this long, hard fight.
He's not a scientist, he's a politician. Hasn't he got it right there? We have to hope for the